Today's episode is brought to you by Navigate 2021.
Coming to First Baptist Church in Benton, Arkansas on August 7th.
Bethany, this week we're talking about a topic that even though a lot of us in church circles don't talk a whole lot about, it's still very real, and that's envy.
Yeah, we're going to be breaking down exactly what envy is and what it's not according to the Bible. Is it a sin or is it just not a good idea? And we're also going to share some practical tips on how to overcome envy if it's something that you find yourself struggling with.
Hey, we're Steve and Bethany, a former radio team turned podcasters.
We're passionate about learning and sharing ways of putting the words of Jesus into practice in real life.
Here we go.
All right, welcome in, Hope Dealers, wherever you are. We are glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us. We want to say thank you especially to those patrons who are here with us as well. They are with us week in, week out. They're kind of our own little family.
Kind of the super fans almost.
That's right. They help us with the production costs of this. But not only that, but they encourage us. They pray for us. They provide.
They're really a part of the family.
Yeah,
for
just
real.
A little bit of a community here for this podcast, and we are so thankful for them. We're going to get back to doing something we started a couple weeks ago, and that's with a little shout out to one of our patrons.
That's right. Yeah, we'll do that later on.
Coming up a little bit later on today. And if you'd like to join, by the way, you can click on the show notes. We've got the link for you right down there. And, of course, every Patreon member gets this episode early, video,
ad-free.
And ad-free. I mean, that's a trifecta right there.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the beginning of the perks of being a Patreon.
Yes.
There's a patron.
Patron on Patreon.
On Patreon. I always mix those two up. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of perks to it, bottom line. So if you want to join, links down in the show notes.
Absolutely. So now today we are going to be talking about this topic of envy. And I'll be honest with you, when I first started thinking about this, you and I kind of discussed, hey, this would be a good topic to do. I kind of wondered, is there a lot of people that struggle with this? But the more people I've kind of asked in the days leading up to this podcast, it's like, there's some struggle with it.
Well, I think it's one of those more subtle things in our lives that we can kind of write off as like just a passing thought, or, that's just like a little thing I feel sometimes or I think about sometimes, and you don't even clock it in a sense. Like, you can just be scrolling through social media and you get that like, why do they have that? Or, something like that. And then, but you don't in your own mind even recognize it as jealousy or envy. You don't realize that it's there. And that's why in some ways I think it's something that you really do need to keep in check, because it can be really subtle, but it can also be really detrimental.
Well, because it is so subtle, I think we need to probably get a good working definition of what envy is.
I liked this definition. I thought this was a really good layout for it. So the definition of envy, according to the dictionary, is a want or desire that leads us towards being resentful towards the traits or the possessions of someone. So basically, it's a feeling that you get that leads to you feeling resentful towards somebody for what they have or a trait that they possess.
Well, the one word that jumps out to me at that definition is resentful.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you think about that, resentful is a strong term because, I mean, hey, that really kind of brings to mind thoughts of, hey, that person doesn't deserve it. I'm angry with that person for having it, and on and on and on.
Well, I think, too, it's something like envy isn't just an emotion that you feel and you don't do anything with it. I think it can really grow into something more, because when you get to the point where you are incredibly jealous of someone, you're either going to, start speaking maybe harshly to them, or kind of shutting them out, or not making them feel included if you're in a group, kind of isolating them, and then it can escalate to something even more serious than that. Crazy things have happened just because somebody is jealous, and that's why I think it's so important. Again, going back to, it's something that we need to keep in check and something that you need to be aware of if it's in your life, so that it doesn't escalate into something really crazy and out of hand.
Well, I think there are a couple of biblical examples that we can talk about. One of them, obviously, I think, to me, the first one that came to mind was Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
The two brothers, they are Adam and Eve's two sons at the time, and both of them come and make sacrifices as an offering to God. Cain is more or less a farmer. Cain is more or less a shepherd. Abel is more or less a farmer. They both bring their first fruits, as you might say, to offer as a sacrifice to God after the fall. This is after the fall and the sin of man and all that, and they've been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. This is when they're all living on the sweat of their brows and the whole thing like that. And both kind of followed the rules that were set up, but God had respect for one, Abel's, and not for Cain's. And the whole reason for that was it gets down to the heart. Abel was wanting to sacrifice and had a heart bent toward God. Cain was just trying to go through the motions and follow it. But because God had, respect for respect for Abel. I'm getting the names mixed up.
We're going to get those mixed up, yeah.
We get respect for Abel's offering. It made a big resentment in the life of Cain.
Yeah, and I mean, it resulted in murder. If you've read that story, you know that Cain ended up murdering Abel. That's the first instance of murder in the Bible. It's kind of that first death that's completely unjust. And so, and also, you see it later on in the Bible with David and Bathsheba, where you think of, even though the circumstances were a little different there, David desired Bathsheba, who was married to somebody else, had jealousy in his heart. He coveted someone else's wife, and again, it resulted in murder. David ended up sending Bathsheba's husband to the front of the line, and instructed his soldiers to pull back and leave Bathsheba's husband isolated all by himself, and he was struck down and killed in battle.
And here's the thing about David's servant that was struck down and killed in battle. That was Bathsheba's husband.
What was his name again? It started with U, right?
Uriah was his name.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. If this is kind of a little nugget tucked away in Scripture, it wasn't some unknown guy in David's kingdom.
Yeah.
This was, if you were to say in today's terms, special force or an elite force, Uriah was one of 30 elite force warriors for David. So when
he was top notch.
When the guy was on the roof and said, hey, King David, I think that's Uriah's wife. He knew exactly who it was. It wasn't something that was like some nameless faithless
guy.
warrior. It was somebody that had put it all on the line for David.
Yeah.
So, it was a betrayal from the very beginning,
But again, that's an example of something like jealousy and coveting and envy resulting in a really extreme situation where, later on, of course, David had a lot of consequences because of that sin, not just because he committed adultery, but also he murdered Uriah. And so there's consequences in his life that we see in Scripture from that. But I think it just goes to show how something as subtle and as small as wishing, man, I should have that, or I want that.
Have her.
I should have her. Yeah, something like that, where that's what the thought that entered David's mind really escalated into something that changed the course of his life forever. It altered everything after that.
Yeah, and you really look at the life of David, probably the one thing he wanted to do more than anything else was to be able to build a permanent house for God, to build the temple, because he looked around at all the great blessings that he had. He was a man after God's own heart. He's like, right now, the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God, is in a tent, and I'm living in like this. I ought to be able to just magnificent house. Well, because of his sin that way, kept him from being able to do that. Now, again, those are all biblical examples, and those are absolutely there for us to learn from. But I think we can kind of zero it into on some real world stuff. I say real world, more contemporary stuff in our own lives. Even when you're starting to talk about things, whether they be promotions at work, think about those people that get promotions a lot of times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You sit there and you work just as hard, and you have all the, qualifications, and you have everything, and the person that gets promoted is her or is him. Come on, man.
And you're kind of going, seriously?
Exactly. You're just left.
That guy?
That's exactly right. You think, of all people,
Yeah.
I know you've had those conversations because I've had those conversations.
Yeah.
I've been in that situation where I have been wanting a promotion. In fact, one of my first radio jobs, I was doing nights at a country station, biggest country station in the market. And I really wanted to move up, really bad. And I was a young kid, and I thought I was doing good. I worked hard, and I was turning in what we call air checks all the time, where I'm giving a demonstration of my work to the bosses and saying, hey, look, I want to have a chance the next time an opening comes up. And I remember that they had an opening for the middays. I'm sorry, no, it was afternoon drive. It was
So kind of like one of the prime times.
yeah, one of the primetime slots from like 3 in the afternoon till 7 at night, and I was just so stoked. And I had filled in that time slot. I had done a good job. Everybody liked me and the whole thing. And then come to find out, it was a guy that got the job who hadn't been in radio in 6, 8, 10 months and was just kind of kicking around. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. I was just so angry, and I was resentful towards this guy. And again, it is not really the guy's fault, but man, it really.
But it's easy, I'm sure, to feel like, well, I wanted it more than he did. Like, he
And
probably doesn't care. You know, I've been in this.
I was more qualified, I felt like.
Right.
And I was there in the trenches, keeping the radio station going. When somebody needed something, I was always there. Call Steve, and he could handle it, and the whole thing. And it made me resentful towards that person and towards the boss and towards the management as a whole.
I think, too, there's moments where in like a job setting, somebody might be qualified on paper. Like, they might have gone to the specific school or gone through a specific training program that makes them qualified for something, but like the practical common sense aspect, maybe they're lacking in. And it's easy to think, okay, yeah, maybe they did this, but I'm smarter, or I have more real life experience doing something. I've actually walked, through this program, or I've been at this job longer, so therefore I should do it. And it's easy, I think, to start comparing yourself to that other person, and you're always going to come out on top. You're always going to look better in your own mind.
And what do we do a lot of times? We look at that as, oh, I have righteous anger.
Right, yeah.
Is that really true, though? Is it? Is it really righteous anger?
Okay, I'm sure a lot of people in their cars are just like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, call us out.
I mean, because I'm really thinking about back to my situation.
It's
because
true, yeah.
I'm thinking about, okay, it really did bother me, and it actually wound up was one of the reasons why I wound up leaving that job, because I felt like I just kept getting overlooked. And it was like, well, if they can't see my worth, I'm going to find somebody else that does. Again, saying that I'm all kind of righteously, right? But maybe in some sort of way I am. But again, if that causes me to sin and causes me to have bad thoughts about people and tear down people's character because I didn't get what I wanted, that's not so much righteousness.
Okay, now, do you think, because we have a multitude of words for this feeling. We have jealousy, we have envy, we have feeling like you're coveting what that other person has. You can use a lot of different words. Do you think there's a difference between jealousy and envy?
You know what? I think there is, and we talked about it on a recent episode when we did the Ask Us Anything.
Right.
Remember, the LJ wrote in and said, "Hey, what about a God who says, I'm jealous, but teaches us not to be jealous?"
Right.
And I thought,
and if you want to go back and listen to that, it's in the archives.
Absolutely, StephenBethany.com. You can
Little
find
plug
it.
there.
You can find it right there. TJ, I got a pop from TJ. That was really nice. No, but I think that's a really good point, because when we look at what the difference between envy and jealousy is, jealousy would be something more or less something that I have in possession, or maybe had in possession. Like, for instance, let's just talk for real. Let's talk about our wives or our spouses, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm jealous over my spouse. I don't want some other guy.
Like, what are you looking at?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because she, in this kind of term, belongs to me and I belong to her, right? So that's the jealousy
part. You've made
part.
vows to each other, committing yourselves to each other.
Right.
So there is that possessive element.
Right,
Yeah.
and I don't want some interloper coming in. Right or wrong, I don't want some interloper coming in between me and what belongs to me, whether it's my wife or other possessions. And I think envy is, on the other hand, where it's like what we've been talking about, where envy is more or less about things that aren't ours, that should be ours. In our minds, should be something that belongs to us, but really doesn't.
Right. I think that's a good distinction, because, too, like, it might be good to judge how do you feel in a situation. If it is something like jealousy over, okay, that guy's checking out my wife, what's that about? Like, again, that's something that you need to have confidence in your marriage and not worry about it.
Right.
But I get it. Like, that's a
Sure.
completely understandable feeling of being like, hey, stop it. Like, you don't worry about that, But I think in the terms of envy, you maybe start to feel like, okay, I'm lacking in this. So that person has it. I'm lacking it. I should have that. Like, you start looking at your life and what you're missing or what you're, quote unquote, deserving of, but that you don't have. And then all these other people that don't deserve it have it. So why can't I have it? If that makes sense.
No, that's very good. Yeah,
Okay.
I like that. That's really good, because when you're talking about that, you're talking about being discontented with whatever lot you have in your life. You think somebody else has that. They don't deserve it. I should have it. I think that shows a pretty good sign of discontentment right there. And again, when we start thinking about, well, why is that so bad? Why is that a sin? I mean, is it wrong to want more and to want to go after more? And I don't think so.
That's ambition.
That's
I don't
ambition.
think. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong in that.
I think envy comes in where it causes anger and it causes those bad feelings to come to the forefront. And when you're able to stop and you think, what I have right now, all the blessings God has given me, the breath in my body, to my house, to my family, to everything, all that I have, it's not enough. And when it's not enough, that I think is when it turns to envy and when it's really a sin.
And what we just touched on too, talking about ambition, like, I think that's something that we see throughout Scripture, that we are to work heartily, that we are to work as unto the Lord, that we are to do our best, to work hard, and to do the best that we can, no matter what it is, to put our mind to something and work hard. I think that's a good thing. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be better, with wanting to, learn a new skill or kind of develop something more within yourself to kind of spur you on. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think it can be really healthy. Obviously, we can make an idol out of anything. We're people. So if you start to become so consumed with self-improvement where your spiritual growth goes out the window, that's obviously a problem. But there's a fine line between wanting to be better and wanting to be someone else.
And I think that line is at the expense of someone else.
Right.
Do I want to be better just because I want to work hard
and bring other people up
and have God bless me to that point? Or do I want what I want because that other person has it and they shouldn't?
And I'm going to step on them in order to get there.
All right, we will insert right there. That was good. Holy cow. I think that was really good.
You were on a roll, bro.
Well, you were too. Off short, sister. All right. So we'll put the Navigate ad right there. And so now we'll just come back and start talking about how we can find some victory in it. All right.
Do you want me to bring it back?
Yeah.
Or you want to?
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today and really joining the conversation on how to overcome envy in our life. Envy is something that we've all felt at some point, or at least I've definitely been there. I don't know if there's any perfect people listening. Maybe you guys don't deal with that, but I've been there for sure. And so I appreciate you all joining us in this conversation. Before we finish up this episode, we do want to let you know all about Tees for Bibles. It's the ministry arm of the podcast, and really it is making an impact all across the world. If you do want to be somebody that is active and involved in making sure that people get the Word of God into their hands, Tees for Bibles is a great way to do that. Go to SteveandBethany.com. Scroll down, you'll see Tees for Bibles. You can pick out a t-shirt and rep us, get some merch. It's pretty cool. Pick out any t-shirt size, color that you want. And then when you do that, the proceeds are going to go to buy a Bible for someone that doesn't have it in their own language, all around the world and here in the U.S. as well. So be sure to do that, SteveandBethany.com.
All right, so we've talked a lot about envy today. Obviously, that's the topic of today's Hopecast. But I always think it's important, especially since we're a Christian podcast and a Christian Hopecast, that we do bring that element of hope. We've identified the problem, so let's bring some solutions to the table. How can we find victory over envy in our lives?
I think recognizing that it is in our lives, one way or another, there's always something that someone else has that we're going to want, but we're commanded to put those things away. We're commanded to put away malice and bickering and all of those things that can be divisive.
And see, those things, I think we tend, or at least I won't say we, I'll say I.
You do.
When I'm reading scripture, malice and envy and backbiting and all that stuff, those are the minor things. You know, let's really focus on the bad sins.
Haven't killed anybody.
Right, exactly.
Everyone,
Even though Jesus said if you have malice in your heart towards somebody, that's the same as murder.
Right.
But continue your thought.
I think that's good. It's knowing that it is something that we all have in our lives. It's serious. It can be really destructive. And if it gets out of control, it can completely change how we view other people, how we view ourselves. It can really eat away and decay us as people. It can really kind of override everyone.
I think it has a lot to do with that as well, and I think it can stunt our growth spiritually as well as emotionally in all other areas of our lives. But when I think back to sometimes in church, we'll be in the pastor will say, you know, if you have something against someone or something that's just bothering you that your brother or your sister in this congregation has done, go make that right. You know, and sometimes envy is something where that other person doesn't have any idea about.
Yeah.
But yet you look at that person with sideways, and it causes you to not be everything you need to be. You don't start seeing the blessings. You see a lot of things. You know, you wonder why your prayers aren't answered. You wonder why God's not using you. You feel like you're stuck in a rut, and you don't feel like your prayers are going higher than the ceiling. And you think, why is that? Well, maybe it's because you need to do a heart check. Maybe is there something that you've got, maybe even if it's deep inside, you know, maybe it's something that's there that you've got against somebody from years ago that's really kind of keeping you from being all that you can be.
I think, too, if it's the kind of thing that you feel, okay, I need to go talk to this person and make it right, don't use that as an opportunity to bash somebody and be like, hey, listen, I got this against you, and I just need to get it off my chest. And quote unquote, I'm going to speak the truth in love. But really, it's just an excuse for you to be really vicious or kind of bitter and kind of word vomit all over somebody, all of your issues with them. There's a way to go about talking with someone. And I think it's to come to them humbly and say, listen, you're probably not even aware of this, but I've been feeling this way because this is something that you have that I don't have, and that it's out of your control. It's not your fault, but this has been eating away at me. It's been pushing me down, and I've been dealing with it, and I just needed to let you know and get it off my chest and say I'm sorry and ask for forgiveness, make it right with that person, make it right with the Lord, and move on. Like, after that, drop it.
Absolutely. And if that's not your intention when you're going to go talk to that person, then stay away.
Because the heart should be reconciliation.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be to just get something off your chest.
No.
It should be to make it right.
Exactly. And that is you coming to terms with your own sin, saying, this is keeping me from not only being what God has for me, but probably keeping our relationship from being what it needs to be as well. And it's my fault because I'm allowing it. And so I just want, like you say, bring it up to you and ask for your forgiveness and hope that we can start again. And so, like I say, sometimes that other person may not even know or be aware, and there may not be anything for them to forgive.
Right.
That's just something between you and God that are going to have to work out. But again, it can just so eat up your life. It can be like what we've talked about with other things, you know, taking that poison pill, hoping that it's going to, you know, affect any other person.
Yeah. This is something else, too. As I was thinking about this episode and just kind of prepping for it, I started thinking about how when we think about envy, you know, it can be like, oh, that person's got a cool car. I wish I had that. Or they've got really cool clothes, or they went on this vacation. That's cool. Those are kind of like almost surface level envy stuff. Oftentimes it can go a lot deeper than that. And I want to say this as tenderly as I can. Sometimes we can be jealous because we're single and everyone around us is married. And that's, you know, you long for a spouse and you don't have that. And that's a point of envy for you towards other people. Or, you know, people have kids and you don't have kids yet. And that's a kind of a point of soreness in your heart where anytime that gets brought up, it just, why don't I have that? And maybe it could be a really well-paying job or a big house or whatever. And again, I don't want to step on toes or make anybody feel bad, because I'm not saying that this is the heart reason for why you don't have those things is, oh, well, if you weren't envious, you would have a spouse or you would have a nice car or a big house or whatever. I think, though, God entrusts us to what he has for us in that moment. We get entrusted with different things in different seasons of life. And I think, you know, in my experience, there's a reason I got married when I did and why I didn't get married 5 years earlier or 5 years later. God knew right when I needed my spouse to come into my life. God has known exactly when I needed to get a job and leave a job, or, kind of move to a different state even, and then, move somewhere else, or, and go around. And God knows those things in our lives. He's sovereign. And so I'm not saying that it's not justified to feel a longing or feel like you're missing out on something when there's a season of your life that you're not in yet. I think that's a completely justified feeling. However, I think it all circles back to trusting that God has us where he has us for a reason. And there's things in our lives that are there for a reason, and there's things that aren't in our lives for a reason. I know that might sound like a blanket, feel-good, Band-Aid kind of statement, and I don't mean it that way at all. But I just hope that people that are maybe in a painful season of life that are really longing for something and they don't have it yet will trust that they know that God is good and faithful and true, and that maybe this is just a season where you have to wait. And that might come with like laying down that envy that you feel every single day and really trying to work through that, but trusting that God has placed you here for this time and there's work to be done in this season. And you can't spend your whole life wishing, I wish I was just, 10 years down the road and I had this. Like being present in the moment and looking around and looking for places to serve and places to make an impact where God has you.
Yeah, well, I think that's absolutely 100%. And when you start talking about a discontentment feeling in your life, bring that to God. He's not too, he's not upset with you bringing that. He knows your situation. So pour out your heart to him. I mean, I'm so thankful that he included the books in Psalms for us in the Bible, because that's what David did on so many occasions. I mean, and again, David was somebody that God said was after his own heart. So a person that had his heart bent toward God like we're supposed to be, right? Even though he was far from perfect. Yeah. But he would be angry, or he would be jealous or envious or any of these other emotions that we all feel, and he would write it out, and he'd pour his heart out to God, and he would be angry, and he would shake his fist, say, God, this is not fair, this is not right. Or he would be just heartbroken and say, God, please forgive me, show me what I need to do to make these things right. So take that to God. If that's you, if what Bethany described is you, please do that. Take that to him. He's not afraid of that. He, in fact, welcomes it and wants you as his child to come and let those feelings be known. And he might not change the situation for you, but he will give you a peace in the moment, like Bethany was talking about. The moment that you're in right now, God cares about it and wants to reconcile it with you.
This morning, as I was doing my devotions, I'm reading through Haggai, which is like a book that I don't know if I've ever read before, truthfully.
Very good for you.
I read it in bits and pieces, but I haven't read it in its entirety. And it's a super short book. It's like, is it 2 chapters, right?
I think,
It's 2. It's like nothing. So it's a short book, and of course the context is different here, but a phrase that's repeated throughout that book is the God that's in your midst. He's in your midst. And so don't be afraid, be strong, I'm in your midst. And that phrase stuck out to me this morning, and I think it's weird that it stuck out to me this morning, and then we're talking about this now, that no matter what we're going through, we can trust that God is in our midst. He's the God that's with us. It's his name. It's part of who he is. And that no matter how we're feeling or what we're struggling with, God does welcome that. He welcomes our imperfections. He's there with us. And he gets it. He understands. We don't have to feel like, well, maybe if I just wasn't so jealous towards somebody, then I could have a good relationship with the Lord. I have to clean myself up or something. That's not at all the truth. We can truly come to the Lord, bring everything to him, and trust that he's doing a work in us, and it will be complete. I mean, he's not done with us. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
All right, we'll insert right there. That's a good place to stop. That was really good. And then, I came across this.
Haggai. How weird is
for
that?
real. I know. I'm proud that you even know this is a Bible book.
My word. You're so rude. This is random.
Yeah.
There's a trivia night going on at a coffee shop.
Okay.
And so Alex, one of my friends, she works with me. She's like, she sent it and she goes, "Are we doing that?" And then Price responded back and said, "Are we winning this or what? We're going to do a trivia night now."
Oh yeah, at a coffee house. Yeah. So
I'm
like just a general trivia thing?
I think it's general knowledge, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty pumped about it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. All right.
I'll let you know next week.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we're going to come back and we're going to do our I'll talk about the recommend, and then we'll start about the Patreon shout out. You want to do that? We'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has his YouTube channel?
Yeah, he's really good.
Wow.
Yeah, he's really good. He's a good dude, and
that's cool.
a lot
I
of
remember
fun.
meeting him, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. All right, before we call it an episode here on Steve and Bethany's Hopecast, we want to kind of give you a chance to find some more resources to help you grow a little deeper. If you maybe feel yourself with this envious, maybe you want to find something to help you out to maybe do a further study
If it's
on.
just struck a nerve.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to say
There
it. If
we
it's
go.
struck a nerve. There is a pastor named Bob Sorge. He has written a book called Envy, the Enemy Within. And now, I didn't know a lot about this guy, but apparently he had some kind of thing happen to his voice about 20 years ago, and he's known like as the whispering pastor now. And he's had to kind of pivot and do a lot of writing instead of preaching. And this is such a good book. It comes highly recommended by a lot of people. So, again, check it out. Envy, the Enemy Within by Bob Sorge. It's going to be linked for you in the show notes at bottom of this page and at stephenbethany.com.
And as we finish up this episode, we do want to give a special Patreon shout out to our very first Patreon member ever. The first guy that ever jumped on board and was like, I'm supporting the Hopecast. John Payne. He's our buddy from way back. He has a YouTube channel that I actually didn't know about. You just told me about this, called Welcome to Your Monday. I think that's so fun. I love the name. Sounds cool. And he's just like somebody that you just get a good vibe from being around.
Yeah.
He's fun. He's incredibly encouraging, super motivational, and just a great guy. It's just been cool to kind of get to know him a little bit. I don't know him super well, but the times that I've met him, he's been so kind and really fun to be around.
Yeah, and he's very encouraging to us from day one, telling us that he likes the podcast, telling us things we could work on, different things like that.
Yeah.
And
I feel like I know him really well, truly through the feedback that he shared.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think is so awesome about Patreon, is that it gives us a chance to really get to know you as a person, even though maybe we don't meet him in person, face to face.
And the coolest thing, I wish, it's one of those things, I don't want to be envious here, but it's one of the things I wish I would have thought of is not the radio station where he and I work together now, but at one he used to work at.
Yeah.
He used to do a thing called Bubble Fridays. They had an outside little porch area, and to relieve the stress of the work week on
They would
Fridays,
blow bubbles?
he would bring bubbles of all kinds, and people from everywhere would come, salespeople,
Aw.
administrative staff, on-air people, and they would come and they would just blow the bubbles.
I love that.
I love Bubble Friday. Like I say, I wish
Yeah.
it's an idea I would have thought of.
That's
It's
like $1 million idea.
It's such a great idea.
Can we bring that into, is that like trademark?
I don't know.
Can we bring it into the podcast?
John's a pretty astute businessman. He may have it trademarked.
That's so fun.
Isn't it?
And more honestly, that needs to be mandatory across workplaces in America. Like, that just needs to be the thing that everybody does. This is how you relieve stress.
Yeah.
This is better than a vacation day. It's like a vacation day every single day.
That's
Take 30
exactly
minutes and blow
right.
some bubbles.
And that's exactly what they did.
I love
Isn't
that.
it great? Yeah.
That's so cute.
So we love John. We appreciate him being a part of our Patreon family. And by the way, if you'd like to join him, the links are there as well for you to become a hope dealer yourself. Now, coming up next week, this is something that I think we both of us have wanted to do for a while, but I really had an opportunity to really have it come brought to the forefront this week when I helped with Vacation Bible School at my church. And that is, we're going to do a topic about leading a kid to Christ. How do you do that? Because I know as parents, it can be crazy scary. I mean, number one, that's what you want for your child.
Right.
I mean, if you really are walking with the Lord from day one, when you're married and you start thinking about having kids, then all of a sudden that's one of your first prayers. Even before the baby is born, you start thinking, God, work in this little child's life and save this little child's soul when the time is right, when your time comes. But when it actually gets there, what do you do? How do you make sure that your little one understands and can follow? So we're going to do that coming up on our next episode.
I think it's going to be a really good topic. I'm excited to talk about that. We do want to say a big thank you to TJ Nichols and Blue Stream Media.
Yay, TJ!
Woo-woo. They are the reason that we are able to do this podcast and have the cameras on and the lights on and these mics working and everything. The mics are working, right?
They are working, apparently.
Okay, well, we hope so.
We hope so.
20 minutes gone by. But no, we really do appreciate TJ. He does a incredible job of making sure that everything is top notch. And if you have a special event coming up and you need some audiovisual help, call TJ and bring in Blue Stream Media, because they really do an incredible job, and make sure that everything is just solid, and they have backups to the backups to the backups to make sure that your event goes off without a hitch.
And not only that, but TJ was just showing me before we hit the record button a little while ago that they've got a new updated part of their website where podcasts. So if you are interested in doing a podcast,
just like us,
yeah, there you go. Get in touch with TJ. He can help you out here with Blue Stream Media. No matter where you live, he can help you.
It's bluestreammedia.com, BLU streammedia.com. They couldn't spell blue like the color.
No,
Left
they had
off
to be
the
different.
Blue
Had to
Stream
be
Media.
different. Yeah, had to stand out. Absolutely. And for everything Stephen Bethany, we'll just head to our website, stephenbethany.com. We've got archived episodes, the T's for Bibles there, the Hope Dealers for Patreon is there. You could leave us a review. You can leave us a 5-star rating. All of that and more is there at our website, again, stephenbethany.com. All the recommendations, too, as well there. So we'd love for you to swing by when you get a chance and you don't have a whole lot to do. Check out stephenbethany.com.
Is that it?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Are we done?
I think we need to put a bow on this one and call it a day.
Let's quit while we're ahead.
Yes, that's no truer words have been said on this podcast.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, Olive Branch.